Hey there, this is Natalie, and in this video I want to talk about a ReZero character we got introduced to in the anime in Season 2 Episode 18, The Witch of Vainglory, Pandora. As has become tradition now for my ReZero content, after the Kadokawa copyright strikes nonsense, I won't be using any clips or official ReZero art in this video, and will instead be using ReZero fan art I begged people I know on Twitter for. So if you like the art in this video, please check out the artists. I'll be showing their Twitter names on screen. Seems like there are people out there who'll draw amazing art of almost anything, even actually me. So getting hold of some nice fan art of Pandora wasn't too tricky, and as you'll see, it does tie into this topic pretty well. Pandora is one of the most enigmatic characters in ReZero, and people who've read the web novels or light novels were keenly awaiting for her to show up in Season 2 so that we could finally talk about her without spoiling anything for anime-only fans. Her powers are mysterious in what they can do and what their limits might be, and she is frankly terrifying. A lot of people theorize that Pandora may even end up being the end boss of the ReZero story, though with author Tappei Nagatsuki currently working on Arc 7 of a planned 11, there's still a lot we don't know about where the story's going to go. But in this video, I'm not going to talk about Pandora's powers, her motivations, or theories about what she might do, though you can check out my video about the Sealing Elior Forest or some of my other theory videos if you want more discussion about those things. This means that this video is spoiler free as long as you've seen ReZero Season 2. Instead, I want to talk about Pandora's design because I think she brings up an interesting dilemma. How do you design a character's appearance for an adaptation when the author has said in the source material that they're basically impossible to imagine? Now, to talk about this, I first need to say some things about how ReZero is written, and something the author has said about how he comes up with what characters look like. If you're anime only, you may not know that the author of ReZero, Tappei Nagatsuki, writes the story as a first draft as a web novel, which has no artwork accompanying it. This story is then refined down into what ends up in the light novels, and this is where the artist, Shinichiro Otsuka, creates the artwork for all of the characters and scenes that will have illustrations in the books. The light novels have actually caught up with the web novel now, because the web novel was on a long hiatus until the end of 2020, but for most of ReZero's run, the web novel was quite far ahead of the light novels, and so there were plenty of characters that web novel readers knew about long before there was any official art of them. Pandora was one of these characters, who people had read about without being able to see what her design was, though as we'll come to, she's a character where the attempts people made to draw fan art of her based on her description ended up being very, very different to how she ended up actually being designed to look by Otsuka. Now, the important thing to know here is that Tappei Nagatsuki has said that he doesn't have a clear picture of what his characters look like when he starts writing about them. This may seem really strange to some people who have a very clear image in their heads of the characters they make up and write stories about and know exactly what they look like. I'm an author, and a lot of writers I know tell me they see the scenes they write play out in their heads like a movie, and then write basically what they see in their imagination. But I understand exactly what Tappei is saying here, because even though I've written dozens of books as a ghostwriter and under my own various pen names, I have aphantasia, which means I have no visual imagination or memory, basically. I imagine things in words, sounds, and other senses, but I never have a particular picture of anything in my mind, whether it's a memory of something that actually happened, or a person I know, a character in a story I'm writing, or a scene in something I'm reading. If it isn't illustrated, I don't really have a visual for it. Now, not a lot is known about aphantasia, because when you think that way, you kind of don't realise that it's not normal, and it really only became a thing people started studying, and which even got a name a few years ago. Though it's thought that at least 1 to 2% of people have it, it could actually be really common. It doesn't really cause any problems. Even though you can't recall exactly what someone or something looks like in your imagination, you still have normal abilities to recognise things when you see them again. And as a writer, I actually think it's kind of convenient, because I imagine everything as words anyway, so I can just write them down, rather than having to translate what I'm imagining as a visual scene into words that somebody else can imagine too. I do have this massive fear every time I go to meet someone somewhere, even if it's someone I know really well, that I won't spot them, because I can't remember their face, but I always do recognise them when I see them. If you're a ReZero web novel reader, then you'll know I completely relate to a certain Arc 6 character when it comes to this. Because it doesn't really cause any issues for the people whose brains work this way then, most people just go through life assuming that the way that they experience memories and imagination is the same as everybody else. Before I knew it was a thing, I used to just think people were talking in metaphors when they said things about visualizing stuff, and I used to think that people being able to remember what somebody looked like distinctly enough to describe it to a sketch artist, and the police to be able to use that to show what a wanted criminal looked like, was just some made-up thing that only actually worked in TV shows. Because to me, anybody I can't actually see with my eyes right now looks like a list of facts about hair colour and body type that could apply to millions of other people. I was kind of amazed when I found out that stuff was real. Still, I have no idea if that's what Tappé is like. All I know is that he said that he doesn't create characters with a clear vision of their appearance in mind, and I just thought I'd tell you all that stuff in case that sounded a bit impossible, or maybe disappointing even. I know to some people it almost sounds like an author cares less about their characters if they say they create them without thinking too much about what they look like. In any case, when you create characters this way, you decide on facts about their appearance, both objective ones like how tall they are, their ethnicity, their hair, how they dress, and any distinguishing features you want them to have, and subjective ones, like the impression other characters in the story have of them. Are they considered in the world of your story to be sexy or cute or intimidating or plain? Do they look tired or sick? Do they give the impression of being well groomed? Writers that think this way tend not to go into a lot of detail about the shape of someone's chin or the size of their nose or any of that sort of stuff, because they don't really need to decide what about a character's face makes them, say, the most beautiful girl the protagonist has ever seen. The important thing for the story is, she's the most beautiful girl the protagonist has ever seen, and the characters around her will treat her as beautiful. The reader will picture her exact features beyond the stated things like hairstyle and colouring, however they like, knowing that they're supposed to be imagining someone extremely pretty. But the thing with this is, when you don't need to be able to imagine a character's appearance to write about them, and you go by this approach of a basic set of physical characteristics, and then more of a sense of how their appearance is perceived, you're free to make characters that are literally impossible for people to imagine, because you can describe people's reaction to seeing things without having to be able to picture exactly what they've seen. In a book without illustrations, this isn't a problem. Plenty of horror writers do this, making unimaginable cosmic entities by establishing the dread they create, rather than what they look like. But as a result, when these kinds of stories are made into movies or anime, or even just illustrated, what can be shown to you by way of a monster can never be that unimaginable horror. It can only be a distinctly imaginable one. You always have this kind of hope there that an artist will have somehow done it, that when you get to see this thing that's supposed to be so horrifying that people go insane just from looking at it, it will be beyond anything you've ever seen before. But no matter how good they are, that's impossible. So they just have to make the creepiest or grossest looking thing they can make, or not show you the monster at all. And this is where eventually I talk about Pandora. If you're anime only, you probably get the impression that Pandora is a pretty young girl with an unnervingly serene voice. But this is how she was described when she first appeared in the web novel. She comes forward, this single girl. This character standing beside Regulus as he looks down at Emilia, Juice and Fortuna is a girl so beautiful that all who see her would tremble. Her long platinum hair gleamed sweetly as if sunlight given form, flowing to her slender neck and streaming down her back. Long eyelashes border her eyes, their shade so deep a blue that they seem to entrap the world. Her looks so overwhelmingly attractive that even a god would hesitate to touch her fingers, with all her perfect pulchritude. Her petite frame is adorable enough that even having the wind cradle her appears risky. What garbs her is merely a single white cloth, and the whole aura of it suggests that the world would permit nothing else to touch her skin. The presence she holds is not that of an ordinary person, and her appearance is not what an ordinary person would have. Her voice possesses an almost magical allure, binding the minds and bodies of those who hear it. Nobody present here capable of saying anything anymore. This isn't the only passage that describes Pandora and the reactions people who see her have, but it gives you an idea of what I'm talking about here. Pandora is supposed to have this goddess-like perfect beauty that is outside of anything normal that we can imagine. Now, there are lots of characters in ReZero who are described to be very good looking, and it's clear from the writing that of the normal cast, Emilia is supposed to be the most beautiful female character and Reinhard the male. But these characters are just very good looking people. Maybe they're beyond the level of perfection Subaru would expect to see in the normal world, but in a way that artwork and imagination have no problem with, and which doesn't go above and beyond what every fantasy setting has. Other characters have other kinds of distinctive, appealing ways they're described to look, such as Beatrice being especially cute and doll-like, Elsa being sexy, Priscilla being glamorous, Rem being pretty, and Julius being elegant. And all of these are things where you can put them together with the basic physical descriptions and make a design that looks like them in the art style of the anime or light novels. But with Pandora, no, because it's impossible to design a character, let alone one that could be easily animated and fit with the anime's art style, who is as supernaturally beautiful as Pandora is supposed to be. Instead, in her design, it seems like the key thing they went for was the simplicity. Because Pandora is so perfect, she doesn't need fancy clothes or a particularly iconic hairstyle. They took the details of her being petite and having platinum hair and blue eyes, and made a design for her that captures that simplicity and the lack of need for ornamentation or distinguishing features. Interestingly, the problem in designing Pandora also applies to Regulus, though for entirely different reasons. Despite Regulus being designed to look just as he does in the artwork and anime in terms of his hair and clothing design, Regulus is described by Tappei as being exceptionally plain and ordinary looking. He is in fact so forgettable in his appearance that Emilia, who sees him in her trial of the past, wouldn't remember him if she saw him again. Now, when we think of a plain, forgettable character design, we usually don't tend to think of things like them having white hair and a distinctive outfit. So while it may be possible to draw a character in ReZero's art style that embodies a plain, ordinary man, indeed there are plenty of characters like that among the Arlem villagers who aren't supposed to steal focus, it's not so easy to represent that plainness just in the face, because everything else the author has given by way of a description is distinctly cooler looking. But this is why when Pandora and Regulus show up together, the perfect goddess and the man so ordinary that he could be present for the biggest moment of your life and you wouldn't notice him a second time, Regulus actually has the more elaborate, flashy design. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think about Pandora and Regulus in their character design, as well as if you were surprised when you found out that Pandora is supposed to be the most beautiful character and Regulus the plainest, if you're anime only. That's all for this video. Thank you as always to my supporters on Patreon, and if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing for more anime analysis, discussion and news. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.